I never imagined a single phone call would change the course of my life. At the time, it seemed so simple, just a conversation I thought I needed to have, but looking back now, that moment marked the beginning of choices that carried me down a road I never expected to walk. My name is Daniel Brooks, and this story isn't easy for me to tell. It's a story about love, mistakes, betrayal, and the fragile human heart that doesn't always follow logic. It began one quiet afternoon in Austin, Texas. I had just returned from a long work trip. I'm an architect, and travel is part of my life, but that week away had felt particularly heavy. My wife, Caroline, had stayed behind, as she often did. We had been married for nearly 10 years, and while we still loved each other in many ways, there was an invisible distance growing between us, like two ships drifting apart on the same ocean. We didn't fight often, but we didn't talk often either. Our conversations had become practical, about bills, schedules, and responsibilities. The spark that once lit up our nights had dimmed, and I couldn't remember the last time we had laughed together the way we used to. While I was unpacking my suitcase, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old college friend, Amanda James. She and I had studied together years ago before life swept us in different directions. She had been a close companion during those days, someone who always encouraged me to dream bigger, and someone I trusted with the kind of thoughts I didn't share with many people. After graduation, we lost touch, as so many people do, but every now and then, I thought about her. The message was short and casual. "Hey, I heard you were back in town for a bit. Want to catch up?" I hesitated for a long time, staring at the screen. Caroline was in the next room, folding laundry and humming softly. She hadn't noticed my pause, but I felt a strange guilt, as if even reading Amanda's name out loud would be a betrayal. And yet there was another part of me, the part that remembered what it felt like to be truly understood, that wanted to say yes. I didn't reply right away. That night, Caroline and I sat across from each other at dinner. She asked about my trip, but her questions were brief, and my answers were shorter. We both seemed distracted, lost in our own worlds. After she went to bed early, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Finally, I picked up my phone and typed back to Amanda. "Sure. It's been a long time. Coffee tomorrow." The next day, we met at a small cafe on 6th Street. The moment I saw her walk in, something stirred in me. Amanda looked almost the same as she had in college, only with a maturity in her eyes that made her even more striking. She smiled when she saw me, and for a moment, I felt like I was 20 again, nervous and excited just to be near her. We talked for hours. She asked about my life, my work, my marriage. I told her the truth, or at least parts of it, that Caroline and I were comfortable but distant, that I felt like something was missing. Amanda listened in a way that made me feel heard, really heard, for the first time in years. She shared her own story, about her divorce 2 years earlier, about raising her daughter alone, and about the loneliness that crept in during quiet nights. There was a vulnerability in her words that matched my own, and I knew we both felt it, the pull of something dangerous, yet undeniable. When we parted, I promised myself that was it. Just coffee. Just catching up. Nothing more. But as I walked back to my car, my hands trembled. I couldn't shake the way she had looked at me, or the way my heart had raced when she laughed. That night, I tried to focus on Caroline. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie, and I agreed, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Amanda. I told myself I was being foolish, that it was just nostalgia, nothing real. But deep down, I knew I was lying. The very next day, I picked up the phone and called Amanda. My hands shook as I waited for her to answer. When her voice came through the line, warm and inviting, I didn't know what I was going to say. But before I could fumble out the words, she said softly, "I was hoping you'd call." In that moment, everything changed. We started seeing each other more often. Sometimes it was for lunch, sometimes just for a walk in the park. At first, we convinced ourselves it was harmless, two old friends reconnecting. But we both knew it was more than that. There was a current running between us, unspoken but undeniable, drawing us closer with each passing day. I struggled with guilt. At night, when Caroline slept beside me, I lay awake, wondering what I was doing. I told myself I could stop anytime, that I hadn't crossed any lines I couldn't come back from. But every time Amanda smiled at me, every time she touched my arm while we talked, my resolve melted away. The turning point came one rainy evening. Amanda had invited me over to her house to help her fix a leaky faucet. It was such an ordinary reason, almost laughable now, but when I showed up at her door, the air between us was charged. We talked, we laughed, and eventually silence fell. She looked at me with eyes that said everything neither of us had dared to speak. I don't remember who leaned in first, only that once our lips met, I knew there was no going back. What followed was a storm of emotions, passion, guilt, longing, and fear all tangled together. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, but every moment with Amanda was also a betrayal of Caroline, the woman who had stood by my side for a decade. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. Amanda had become the escape I didn't know I was searching for, and I clung to her like a drowning man clings to a lifeboat. Weeks turned into months. I became an expert at excuses. Working late, extra meetings, traffic delays. Caroline noticed, of course. She asked questions, her eyes searching mine for answers I couldn't give. I could see the hurt building in her, even when she tried to hide it. One night, she asked me outright, "Daniel, is there someone else?" I froze. My mind screamed at me to deny it, to protect the fragile world I had built. And that's what I did. I shook my head, forcing the words out. "No, of course not." She nodded slowly, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me. The weight of my choices grew heavier each day. Amanda wanted more. She wanted a future, one where we didn't have to hide. She told me she loved me, and part of me wanted to say it back. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the vows I had made to Caroline, held back. I was living in two worlds, and the walls between them were closing in. The truth finally came out one evening, when Caroline found a message on my phone. It wasn't explicit, just Amanda asking if I'd made it home safe, but the familiarity in her words was enough. Caroline confronted me, her voice trembling with anger and pain. I tried to explain, to say it wasn't what it looked like, but the tears in her eyes told me she already knew the truth. That night, everything shattered. Caroline packed a bag and left to stay with her sister. I sat alone in our quiet house, surrounded by memories of the life we had built, and for the first time, the weight of my choices crushed me completely. I called Amanda, desperate for comfort, but even as she answered, I realized something. What I had been searching for wasn't really Amanda. It wasn't even about her. It was about the emptiness inside me, the longing for connection, the fear of being invisible in my own marriage.